Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the worst insert card designs of hockey in 1992. Now, for me, growing up as a football and basketball card collector in the early 90s, there's a certain standard that I have for cards, which is just born out of the world that I was used to in cards, where they were very innovative in those two sports. Baseball was always off on the side in kind of churning through, doing what had always been done. There wasn't a lot of innovation going on. And so there wasn't really a lot to draw me in, setting aside the fact that I wasn't interested in the sport anyway. Hockey, that was just boring. To me, those cards never had any life, any interest to them. That's just the way that they all felt. And frankly, I haven't seen a lot of proof that I was wrong about that. And so when I was putting together this list, what I found interesting was that the whole idea that I had about hockey cards being just kind of bland was very much the case here. The cards don't have a lot of interest. It's not that they're terrible. It's just that there is this amazing consistency of cards being almost interesting. And true, these are the worst examples. But even at the higher end, the cards didn't seem to have the kind of life that I would expect. So as I go through this list, that's pretty much what you're going to be seeing. And I start the list off with an honorable mention of the Pro Set Team Leaders. And the team leaders cards, this is very much indicative of Pro Set at the time. Pro Set had figured out how to make great cards in football in 1990 and in 1991. And not with their platinum cards, but definitely with their main sets. And especially in 1991, where they had figured out how to really make full bleed cards work well. But in 1992, they needed to make a change, and they weren't ready to make that change. And that's kind of the way the 90s were. You really needed to be reinventing yourself about every 2 years. And so they got to that point where they had to make that next change, and they didn't quite know how to do it. Where they landed in 1993 wasn't the right place. But Pro Set had a certain thought process that they had that was difficult for them to shake. And in 92 to 93, you were starting to see a breath of life of the next step that they would need to make. And this card, so like in hockey with the inserts did a pretty good job of having all of those qualities. Not great cards, but they were better. But this card kind of shows the limitations, which is that it has all the things that it needs to be a cool card. The way that the image is laid out on the card and chosen is not great, but it's workable. They have some really nice gold foil on it. They have an interesting element on it that makes it kind of distinctive. It has all the things that it needs. It's just they didn't quite resolve this card. And you're not always going to be successful. So this is the insert set that didn't really do very well. The other ones were a lot better, but this shows that Pro Set was still trying to figure this out, and you can see the experimentation on this card. It just didn't quite work, but it's not terrible. And so this started off for me at number 5, but I bumped it up to the honorable mention because for me the number 5 is a card that's been sliding its way on and it's not moving anywhere else. But at number 5, I've got the Score Team Canada cards, and the Team Canada cards is a lot of red, very much a lot of red. This is a card that, so for me, when I look at hockey for Score was very boxy with hockey cards. And the exception being 1991. 91, they lost their mind and made a really cool card. One of the best Score cards, I think, ever. But apart from that, everything else was really boxy. And with these Team Canada cards, it's super red around the outside. There are some interesting elements on it, which is nice. I mean, they've got some red foil on the card, which I love, except it's not all that distinctive. They don't have the things that they need to make the card pop out and make a statement. It is very, very, very well crafted. I mean, it really is, but it's very boxy. It's the kind of thing that you could imagine holding up inside of a building all winter, just kind of boxed in there, just very kind of claustrophobic. And it's not that they don't know how to do this, because if you look at the Team USA cards, obviously they have blue, which helps out a lot, but they also have some interest in the fact the card's broken up. So while there's more interesting stuff on the Team Canada card, the Team USA card is a card that works better in terms of how it feels, just the way that it reads overall. So the reason I started off originally with this card, not the Team Canada card, not even being on the list, but then sliding into honorable mention and now here at number 5, is the fact that over time I've lost the luster of the quality of the craftsmanship and fallen victim to the interest element, which is that I think this is a much better card than the Pro Set card, but the Pro Set card has more interest for me. That's kind of the way that it is. But these two are kind of often on their own, because the next card to me is very, very much deserving of number 4, which is the O-Pee-Chee anniversary cards. And I love the concept of this. So O-Pee-Chee was transitioning away from the Canada card or the Canada print of Topps cards and becoming their own entity. And so here they were celebrating their history of Topps cards without the Topps logo on it by showing the top rookies from each of the years. And it really is cool because you get to see these great cards that you wish that you could have, and you get your own prints of it. This card set was a subset in the set, and it was an insert. So they had 2 different versions of the same card. So the insert set is almost like a parallel of the subset. And I love how they bring back the designs and you get to see them and actually have them, but at the same time, they diluted it. Part of that was that they shrunk down the card, the actual size of the card that's printed on it, in order to have an outer band around the outside with the anniversary logo on it, and obviously to make sure that people didn't get confused that this is not the actual card. So all of that, but the kind of material that they used on the card, I don't like. Now, I like the concept of this being like a retro card. And so having a print, a card stock that is not the super glossy card makes sense, but I'd really rather for these cards to have more of a retro quality, because Topps I love the way the cards came out for the 1996 cards where you were seeing different years for players. And frankly, in 1994, when they did the archives in football, or in 92 when they did archives for basketball, and I mean, they really did know how to make these cards so that they had a cool interest to them as archives cards. And in this case, it just feels cheap is the problem. I love the concept. I just don't like how it came out. I feel like it needed to be done in a fancier way. So they tried, but they, A for the idea. But not getting away from O-Pee-Chee yet, we got to shift over to O-Pee-Chee Premier. And with O-Pee-Chee Premier, I've never been a fan of the O-Pee-Chee Premier cards, the main cards, because this is supposed to be Topps Leaf. That's what it's supposed to be. The problem is Leaf really did a good job. O-Pee-Chee did not. And so the cards are designed to be really fancy. And it looks to me like somebody ran a mathematical computation and came out with this card. You need to have the this and the that and the this and the that, and you put all those together and you have a really nice card, all the things, except it doesn't work well as a card that really draws interest. You have to take time and study the card to really appreciate it, or get a quick wow factor and then move on, so that in the back of your mind you have the good aftertaste, not the bad aftertaste. That's what I see with this card. And here we have an insert card, and it's just more of the same. Unfortunately, they tried too hard with the O-Pee-Chee Premier cards, and that's where I see the problem. So I don't think it's successful, and the insert card it kind of carries along. So the star performers, not a fan. But when I move on to number 2, now we're getting into a card that for me I kept forgetting about. This is the Score Sharpshooters. And this card is, So when I put together these videos, I have to run through talking about this for hours and just go through it and just get used to talking about it. So when I sit down here, I can do one clean take and present it all. And there's oftentimes a card that I will forget about, and I'll have to constantly remind myself, what was that? What was that? Score Sharpshooters is the one here. And that's because there's nothing really that endearing about the card. I mean, when you look at the card, it looks like something you're going to remember, but for me, I find that I then very quickly forget it. It's a 3/4 bleed with a strong image, which is good, and it has a black band down at the bottom. It has some gold foil. It has not that interesting logo, but a distinctive logo. has some gold foil up at the top. It has all the things it needs. But this also feels like a mathematical computation. Like they ran all the numbers and this is what they came up with, except unlike with O-Pee-Chee, in this case, they forgot to add the mathematical computation for an interesting card. This card is lackluster. It is a card that I forget instantly. And that's the big problem this card has. There's nothing really distinctive about it. It looks nice, it's not memorable. And on top of that, while it does look nice, if you explore it, it's boring. So it does all of the things wrong. I love the fact that Score was trying so hard with this card to really make it look just gorgeous. And I wish that they hadn't tried so hard as much as allowed it to be something that it just ended up not being. So not a big fan of that. But it's not number one because I'm going with a card that's very similar, which is the Parkhurst Cherry Picks cards. And the Cherry Pick cards are... This one really frustrates me because it also is a nice card. It is Pro Set at its, arguably at its borderless best. I mean, not quite as borderless best. That was 91 football. But this really shows that when they did it right, they could make some really interesting cards, except the card has to have some interest. This falls into the same trap as the Pro Set Platinum cards, where they didn't do enough on the front of the card to make a memorable set element to the cards. And so you got to rely entirely on the picture to hold up. And while these cards do have really good pictures, there is something that's missing. I need to feel something, even if you just put like the Parkhurst logo opposite the Cherry Picks logo, because I love the Cherry Picks logo, but it disappears in the card. I very quickly stopped noticing it. It is a very well manufactured card, but there's no interest on it. And that's the thing. It does have better distinction than the Sharpshooters from Score, but at least with the Score cards, they are very distinct overall. They actually grab you and make a statement. With the Cherry Picks, I feel like there's something missing. I always feel like there's something missing, and I always will, and that's the problem. So even though some of these cards are really well made, the Score Team Canada card, very well made, Sharpshooters, Cherry Picks, they're really great cards, except for the fact that they are all lacking interest. And then with O-Pee-Chee, they have their own problems. And so this is a case of, I'm looking and I'm going, you guys have everything you need, but for some reason in hockey, they had a difficult time really putting the pieces together. So at least nobody failed. But there's just a huge lack of interest, and that's what it comes down to. This, to me, is a sea of bland, even though some of these are really well crafted and have some really great qualities. They just don't quite make, they don't sell it. So this is where I have the list of the worst insert designs for hockey in 1992. For the next video in this series, I'm going to do an overall looking at all four sports, the worst cards across all of them, or worst insert cards. So we'll get to see where hockey lands and all of that. Let me know your thoughts on this in terms of how these cards read, and if you think there's another card that should have been on it. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And thank you very much for watching.